Once upon a time, there lived a very proud and arrogant man whose name was Toby. He was so handsome that he believed that his handsomeness could get him any woman of his choice. He slept with so many women and kept several relationships at a time with no regard for the feelings of these women. Toby was known as a serial heartbreaker who played with the emotions of countless women, leaving behind a trail of broken hearts. Toby reveled in the power he held over these women, finding satisfaction in their tears and desperation. The women he left behind often warned others about him, but Toby's charm and good looks made it difficult for his next targets to resist. Ngozi was one woman who had been with him for over 12 years. Toby had promised to marry her someday. He even went ahead to introduce himself to her family, providing assurances to her that one day she would be his wife, and Ngozi, believing his every word, chased away all the men who came to ask for her hand in marriage. She remained single, hoping to be married to Toby, but what she did not know was that Toby had no plans of ever marrying her. He had made up his mind to marry a virgin woman, of which Ngozi was not. In Toby's mind, Ngozi was just a woman to pass the time with, someone who served his needs without deserving the commitment he falsely promised. For Toby, the idea of settling down with Ngozi was laughable. Despite all her loyalty, sacrifices, and the years she had invested in him, he believed that marrying a virgin would guarantee her loyalty, purity, and devotion, values he lacked but deeply craved for in a partner. But what Toby did not know was that life was about to take a dramatic turn. One day, Toby announced to his friends that he was ready to get married. His friends, who were accustomed to his reckless ways, laughed in disbelief, but Toby was dead serious. He began searching for a wife, a virgin woman who was untouched and innocent, a woman who would be worthy of his name and status in the society. Toby was so sure of what he wanted. He could not risk ending up with a woman who was like himself. The phobia of being deceived or betrayed by a woman who shared his own unfaithful tendencies consumed him greatly, and Toby was not willing to endure such a life. He decided to pipe low on his current lifestyle, hoping to find his perfect bride. He cut off all communications with the women in his life, including Ngozi, blocking her calls and avoiding her family. Toby began to attend church services, believing that he could find virgins in church. He even joined the workforce in church and became actively involved in church activities, hoping to make a good impression. Among those who noticed him was Damilola, a quiet, kind-hearted woman known for her modesty and strong faith in God. Damilola was everything Toby had been looking for in a woman. She was a renowned virgin who was not only beautiful but virtuous and deeply rooted in the things of the spirit. Toby set his sights on her and began to pursue her with the same determination he had once used to chase his countless women. However, Damilola was not easily swayed. She heard of Toby's reputation and was skeptical of his sudden transformation. Toby, on seeing her skepticism, put on the performance of his life. He portrayed himself as a changed man, deeply in love with God and determined to build a future with a woman like her. He joined the church prayer group and spent 21 days praying on a mountain. During this time, he fasted so often that he began to lose so much weight. His determination to win Damilola over became the talk of the entire church, and many admired his supposed transformation. However, Toby struggled with his past life. He began to secretly visit his numerous women at night, whilst maintaining his image as a reformed man during the day. He was so confident in his ability to deceive everyone, not knowing that life had other plans for him. One evening, after prayer meeting, Damilola accepted his marriage proposal. Toby was so excited that he could barely contain his joy. He saw her acceptance as a victory, proof that he could outsmart everyone and have the perfect life that he always wanted. with a virtuous wife who would remain loyal to him whilst he continues to live a double life. Ngozi heard of the proposal and was so devastated. She had given Toby 12 years of her life, only to find out from others that he was engaged to another woman, a woman he had paraded as virtuous and worthy, whilst treating her like a disposable commodity. The betrayal cut deep, and the humiliation of being discarded so easily was so unbearable for her. Determined to get answers, Ngozi called Toby repeatedly and realized that he had blocked her number. She sent messages, which all went unanswered, so one day she decided to confront him directly at his home. When Toby saw her at his doorstep, he sighed in frustration but allowed her inside. Ngozi, trembling with anger and heartbreak, asked, "Why, Toby? After everything we've been through, why would you do this to me? You promised to marry me. You even introduced yourself to my family." Toby, cold and dismissive, leaned back on his couch and smirked. "Ngozi," he said, his tone dripping with arrogance. "Let's be honest. You were never wife material. You were convenient, that's all. Someone I could have fun with while I figure out my life." Ngozi gasped, her eyes filled with tears. "Convenient? After 12 years? After everything I gave up for you? I chased away good men because I believed in your lies." Toby shrugged nonchalantly. "That's your problem. You made your choices. I never put a gun to your head. Look, I need a wife who is pure, someone I can trust to give me loyal children. You don't fit the criteria. It's that simple." Ngozi stared at him in disbelief. His words were like daggers, cutting deeper than she thought possible. "You think you're better than me? That you deserve purity when you've been with countless women? You're a hypocrite, Toby." Toby chuckled. "Call me whatever you like, Ngozi. At the end of the day, I'm the one getting married to a woman who meets my standards. And you? Well, you're just a chapter I've closed." Ngozi stood there, shaking with rage. She wanted to scream, to hit him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he had caused her. But instead, she walked out, her heart heavy and her spirits broken. As the wedding day approached, Toby was on top of the world. He had everything he wanted: a beautiful, virtuous bride, the admiration of the church, and a spotless reputation. But what he did not realize was that his past was about to catch up with him. The wedding day finally arrived, and it was nothing short of grand. Toby, dressed in his finest suit, stood proudly at the altar as Damilola walked down the aisle, radiating beauty and grace. Their wedding was a grand celebration, and Toby felt proud of himself for securing the woman he believed to be his perfect wife. The ceremony was flawless, and the couple exchanged vows in front of the congregation. Toby promised to love and honor Damilola. He carefully deceived everyone present, who believed that their union was truly blessed by God. However, on the night of their wedding, Toby was confronted with the shocker of his life. He woke up in the middle of the night to find his wife Damilola sleeping with her eyes wide open. Toby froze as he stared at her in disbelief. His wife Damilola lay still in bed, her eyes wide open but completely unresponsive, like one in a trance. Toby felt a cold chill run down his spine. He could not understand what was happening. Was this some kind of medical condition? Or worse still, was she pretending? He thought to himself as he shook her gently, waking her up from her strange sleep. "Dammy," Toby whispered nervously. "You were sleeping with your eyes wide open. Are you alright?" He asked Damilola, who blinked a few times, her expression calm and peaceful. "Oh, it happens sometimes," she said softly as she sat up in bed, acting as though it was normal. Toby could not help but feel terrified. However, seeing how calm she was, he decided not to dwell too much on it. As the days went by, Toby gradually returned back to his normal life. He stopped going to church and even began to visit his numerous women without fear. Toby was not worried about hiding anymore, knowing that he had a decent wife at home. Whilst he went about frolicking with other women, his wife Damilola remained at home, worried of his whereabouts. One night, whilst Toby was out with a certain woman, he slumped on the floor unconscious. The woman panicked and screamed for help, drawing the attention of people nearby. Toby was rushed to the hospital, where the doctors conducted several tests but found nothing physically wrong with him. To everyone's astonishment, he woke up hours later, confused but unharmed. The incident shook him, but he quickly brushed it off as exhaustion. Determined not to let the strange event stop him, Toby resumed his escapades. However, the next time he was with another woman, the same thing happened. He slumped to the floor unconscious again. This time, it took longer for him to wake up, and the woman he was with fled in fear, leaving him to fend for himself. Toby began to notice a pattern. Every time he was with another woman, his body would betray him, leaving him humiliated and vulnerable. The occurrences became so frequent that Toby began to feel extremely terrified. He avoided going out with other women, fearing what would happen if he did so. However, his arrogance made it difficult for him to change. He convinced himself that it was all a coincidence and decided to test his luck one more time. This time, he secretly met with a former lover of his, determined to prove to himself that he was still in control. As they sat together in their hotel room, Toby felt a sudden wave of dizziness. Before he could make sense of it, he slumped to the ground unconscious and woke up a few hours later to find himself alone, drenched in his own sweat. Toby was so petrified. He consulted his friends, who were all shocked to hear what was happening. They pondered on what could be the cause, and one of his friends, Tunde, reminded him of Ngozi. Tunde's words hit Toby like a ton of bricks. He hadn't thought about Ngozi in months, dismissing her as a closed chapter of his life. But now, her name brought a chilling realization. Could she be behind all of this? He couldn't shake the memory of her last words. "You think you're better than me. You'll never escape the pain you caused me." Toby, now desperate, reached out to every spiritualist and doctor he could find, but no one could give him a clear answer. Every time he tried to explain his condition, people looked at him confused, dismissing his experiences as stress or guilt. But Toby knew better, that this was no coincidence. He began to look for Ngozi. He searched everywhere for her and even visited her house, but Ngozi was nowhere to be found. All her phone numbers were unreachable, and Toby made his way to her family house and realized that it was empty. This was so unusual, as no one knew their whereabouts. As the days went by, Toby's condition worsened. He could barely be around any woman, and this troubled him greatly. His friend Tunde advised him to focus on his wife Damilola, but Toby was hell-bent on finding a solution to his predicament. He could not stand the thought of being with only one woman and had to do something about it. He approached his friend Tunde, who took him to a powerful prophetess who cleansed him by the river to chase away all forms of evil from him. Toby believed that with this, his predicament would be solved. After the cleansing, he felt a sense of unease. He had no idea if the cleansing had worked or not and decided to test it out for himself. As he left the house that morning, his wife Damilola warned him about a terrible dream that she had. She urged him to remain home, but Toby was hell-bent on satisfying his desires. He had to know if the strange incident had stopped, so he ignored her warnings and rushed out of the house. On his way, Toby came across an extremely beautiful woman walking along the road. Her beauty was so captivating, and Toby could not resist. He pulled his car over and offered her a ride. The woman smiled politely and accepted, stepping into the car. As they drove, Toby tried to start a conversation, his usual charm in full effect. The woman introduced herself as Ada. Her voice was soft, but her words carried an unsettling weight. "You seem like a man who enjoys the company of women," she said, glancing at him as Toby chuckled. "Well, I do enjoy good company, and you, Ada, are beautiful company, and I would like to spend some time with you." he said to Ada, who smiled and agreed. They both drove to a nearby hotel, and Toby took Ada into one of the rooms. As he approached her, Toby realized that nothing had happened. Feeling so powerful, he went in for a hug and realized that nothing still happened. Toby was so delighted to see that he didn't slump to the ground. He quickly went in for a kiss and felt an intense heat overshadow his entire body. His entire body stiffened as his heart raced through his chest. Toby collapsed to the floor, but this time he was still conscious. He watched as Ada transformed into a very terrifying snake before his eyes. Toby tried to scream, but no words came out. He lay there motionless as the snake began to approach. Toby could see his life flash before his eyes. He had never felt so helpless in his entire life. He thought his end had come as the snake coiled itself around him, tightening his grip with every passing second. Toby wished someone would save him as he felt his life dim with each passing minute. In that moment, the hotel room door swung open and Toby's wife Damilola, who he never knew had trailed him to the hotel room, walked in. She caught sight of the snake and began to say some prayers. As she watched the snake vanish before her eyes, Toby, still on the floor, was trembling uncontrollably as his wife Damilola began to pray for him. Toby lay there as his wife began to ask some weird questions that he never saw coming. "What did you do to Tunde?" she asked Toby, who froze to hear such a question from her. Toby sat there shocked as he remembered all that happened between Tunde and himself in the past. It all happened so many years ago, when they were much younger, when Toby slept with the woman Tunde loved with all of his heart. He did this to prove to Tunde that no woman can resist his charm. It was all games to him, not knowing how hurt his friend was by his actions. For all these years, Tunde had looked for a way to pay him back for what he did. He did a charm that made Toby collapse whenever he was with another woman. All the while, Toby blamed Ngozi for his predicament, not knowing that his friend Tunde was the one who was behind all the strange things that were happening to him. He never knew that his wife Damilola had the gift of seeing things before they occurred. This was why she slept with her eyes wide open, and Toby never knew that she was aware of all his escapades. Filled with so much terror, Toby began to plead for forgiveness. He admitted all his wrongs to her as he apologized for all that he had done, promising to change. The next morning, Toby approached Tunde and apologized for what he did. He knew how hot Tunde was and believed that no amount of apology would be enough to heal the hurt that he had caused. Tunde looked at Toby, his face unreadable. "Toby," he finally said, his voice calm but firm, "you broke me. You took away something precious to me, and for years I held on to that pain. I thought revenge would make me feel better, but it didn't." Toby felt his heart break as tears poured down his face. "Tunde, I was arrogant and foolish. I thought I was invincible. I see now that my actions hurt you deeply, and I'm truly sorry. Please forgive me. I want to make things right." Tunde sighed and placed a hand on Toby's shoulder. "Forgiveness is not easy, but I won't let hate consume me any longer. I forgive you, Toby, but you need to truly change." Toby, in that moment, made up his mind to change. He saw the pain that he had caused to those around him and decided to lead a different life. With his wife Damilola by his side, Toby began to rebuild his life. He cut ties with his past lifestyle and focused on becoming a better man. He returned to the church, not to impress anyone, but to seek true repentance and redemption. He spent time in prayer, asking God for forgiveness and strength to change. Damilola, though hurt by his actions, supported him. She saw his sincerity and believed that with time, he could become the man that he was meant to be. Together, they worked on their marriage, with Toby vowing to remain faithful and dedicated. After so many years had gone by, Toby finally met Ngozi again at the airport. She had relocated abroad with her family and was now married to a man who loved and cherished her. Toby apologized to her for all that he did and Ngozi forgave him, seeing how life had smiled down on her and given her all that she ever wanted. That was how Toby, the serial womanizer, became a faithful husband to his wife, who he never cheated on till the end of his days. The lesson to be learned from this story is that no one is above the consequences of their actions. Pride and arrogance may offer temporary satisfaction, but it ultimately leads to one's downfall. Life has a way of balancing itself out. Our actions, whether good or bad, often come full circle. So in life, we should learn to treat others with respect. Whatever you do in life, do not neglect the feelings of others. Always treat people the way you would like to be treated, and never take loyalty and love for granted. Always remember that sincerity in relationships is the bedrock of true happiness. I hope you enjoyed the story.